Popping with the population is another episode of Do-Rag with the Cape Bro. I currently have on a keffiyeh right now, so you can't really see the do-rag under it. Shout out to Palestine, well, Free Palestine. I don't even think I need to go into all that's going on, but basically right now, the Israeli government is bombarding Palestine with wild rockets and whatnot, and claiming that they're trying to eradicate Hamas. But if you look at the numbers, a lot of small children and families and homes and property and whatnot is being destroyed, and families being torn apart to a point where it'd be, irreconcilable damage type of things that's going on right now. And I find it to be kind of wild when you think about the language used, where when they speak of what they're doing to the people of Gaza, the people that are living in Palestine, they only talk about it as far as how the media shapes it. It's only talking about Hamas. We're just getting at them, blah, blah. As if there isn't a lot of collateral damage, ridiculous amounts. And that's just for the terms of what's going on. But the language is pretty weird when you hear how they moving. Right now, even though the American media talks about it, the main thing they're talking about now is trying to get rid of these not college professors, I'm sorry. Well, some of them. I know one lady, I think Claudine Gay, is a college professor, and now she's the president, I think, Harvard. But they backed her, Harvard held her down when they was trying to get rid of her because some congresswoman who is a woman that believes in the replacement theory.
New York Republican Congressmember Elise Stefanik herself faced scrutiny for campaign ads she ran last year that echoed Donald Trump and appeared to promote the white supremacist Great Replacement theory that Jews want to replace and disempower white Americans. She made similar comments after the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York that was inspired by the Great Replacement theory.
Was trying to ask a loaded question about do you think that calling for the eradication of Jewish people is something that's action that's permissible to have someone dismissed from school and yada yada yada. But if you listen to the whole talk,
at MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for Intifada.
Realize the language that she's attacking, saying that language is used to put across that sentiment and stuff that's not about that, like Intifada. So Intifada, I misspoke. Intifada. So, from what I've looked up, objectively, tried to listen to angles on both sides of it, and then just heard a man who is, this is a wild thing to study, but he's someone who is well versed in genocide and especially when it comes to the Holocaust and stuff like that. I'll put a clip of what he talked about in this, but he was talking about Intifada, and he was that literally means in Arabic literally means freedom. The
question is that Intifada, which essentially means uprising, is the equivalent of an attempt at genocide at Jews. Intifada is actually a term that has been used even in uprising against Arab governments. Intifada can take nonviolent forms. The first Intifada had a lot of nonviolence. The second Intifada tragically involved suicide bombings, which were horrifying and totally immoral. But these...
it's a phrase for getting from up under your professor, from your oppressor, being able to be free and stuff of that nature. And the way that the clothing store, whatever that lady's name is, she's a psycho. Like, if you look into her, she is wild. That is also like one of Donald Trump's favorite people. If that right there alone should tell you how great of a person she is. But if you look up that term and you look up why those people, like everybody at those schools was using that kind of language, but it wasn't in that regard, like to incite violence upon the Jewish students or to try to cause any kind of friction in that regard, especially considering the fact that there are a lot of Jewish people, whether they be Orthodox or Hasidic Jewish people, who are for the ending of the Israeli rule in regards to how they are treating the Palestinians and how they are trying to basically annex all of that land over there. Because people aren't talking about what Israel is doing right now when it comes to Lebanon. Like, they're still attacking Lebanon and they're claiming that they're trying to get rid of Hezbollah. And it's like, no, you want to annex. Like, if you go in and looking up the 6-Day War, you realize, like, oh, the Israeli government is just trying to take over that whole region. Like, they just want Syria. They want Syria, they want Palestine, they want Jordan. They really want Egypt, too. They just want it all. And that's the Israeli government, not the Israeli people. And people keep conflating the two. Especially now, I don't know if it passed, but in the U.S. Congress, they were trying to pass like some kind of bill or whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of motion to say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic, which in turn it's not, because Zionism Zionism has more to do with nationalism than it does to do with Judaism. And also, you're trying to cause issues for no other reason than to take away from the problems of the world, because we're arguing language. So you say, if it's out of, oh yeah, that's inciting violence on Jewish people, when nobody is doing that at any of these protests in any of these colleges. Oh yeah, you want to bring up, it was, I think it was NYU, there was Jewish students that were inside of that didn't feel safe, so they were inside of the library, and then you had some protesters putting up signs up against the windows, and those kids felt unsafe. Like, that's them feeling unsafe is that's sad, and those people that were kind of making them feel unsafe, that's not cool. But there was no violence there. Like, we could talk about that situation as a separate situation. There's no violence there. So what are you really saying? And also, the smoke that's coming in front of the camera, like, setting the ambiance, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if it look cool to you, but it look cool to me right now looking at this camera. Nevertheless, that's not violence. That's more of a isolated situation where you had students feeling away, so they felt that they needed to be in a library to feel in a better way. And you had people who were protesting, who were putting up signs of, and really, if you look at the signs, it wasn't like signs like any kind of thing that inciting violence upon those people for being Jewish. It was like stuff about Zionism. Nevertheless, that situation is an isolated incident, and then you can talk about like how those kids felt and how those protesters operated, and you can come to a place. Just like the situation I think that happened at Harvard, where you had people do like a sit-in, well, it's like a die-in, where like they all lay down and they were like, doing it for Palestine. And you had a Jewish student coming by taking pictures of all their faces. And then you had the kids get up and like put tarps in front of him and like say, shame, shame, shame. And they tried to call that violence. It's like, fam, first of all, that kid is doxing them, because like taking pictures, well, we don't know if that kid was going to dox him. Let me not assume. But to walk around and take pictures of people's faces while they're doing this and try to kind of like pretty much step on whatever they're doing is rude. Now, how they reacted was just, hey, no, get out of here, shame, shame, shame. How is that violence? And then when you consider that those students did that, when you consider that, I forgot at which college. There was a college where somebody was driving a truck with like a digital billboard that was showing the faces of people who were protesting for Palestine and giving their names, their like what classes they take type shit, like they like all types of information, like, and that's not violence. Like I thought you can't do that. That's not violence. Or the literal violence happened in Vermont, where three Arab Palestinians were like in town. I think two of them were like Brown alumni, whatever have you. But they were one of them was coming to visit family. Nevertheless, a dude decided to shoot them, all three of them. One of them is possibly going to be paralyzed, and the one that's possibly going to be paralyzed put out a statement calling for peace. But you hear none of the news media talking about somebody who is possibly going to be paralyzed calling for peace. Like, Arab Palestinians, European and Arab Jews, or whatever have you, we need to come together. They don't put that out. And also, it's a hilarious, sick word to use, but what's wild about that situation is that the dude that did it, if you watch the press conference, they're like, yeah, you know, it's wild that this happened. You know, we're going to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law, whatever. But we don't necessarily know if this is a hate crime.
We do not yet have evidence to support a hate crime enhancement. I do want to be clear that there is no question this was a hateful act.
Then the lady says, we don't know if this is necessarily a hate crime. We do know this is a hateful act, but we can't necessarily say that this is a hate crime yet. Are you serious, bro? What? And this is maybe a few weeks. Well, this happened like last week or so, or a week. But this happened like in the framework of, there was a lady in Jersey who drove her car into what she thought was a Jewish community center, and it wasn't. It was a Hebrew Israelite community center, which is hilarious because those people hate that. Whatever, it's hilarious. But they immediately was like, "Oh no, that's a hate crime." But three Arab Palestinians walking and getting gunned down for no apparent reason. Oh no, that's not a hate crime. By this white dude, right? Who, this is hilarious. The cops pull up to arrest him. How they catch him is the pretty much greatest example of how politics and how like optics work and just the institutionalization of racism works in America. They come to his home, knock on his door. He answers and says, "I've been waiting for you." The fact that they came to the home of a man who is a suspect and of attempted homicide, and they just casually pull up and he's like, "Yeah, I've been waiting for you." What? Anybody else that wasn't him, that either looked like me or any other color.
When detectives knocked on Eaton's door, authorities said the 48-year-old told them, "I've been waiting for you," but made no other statements that would point to motive.
There would have been a SWAT team up. They pulled up to his door and knocked. And he answers. I don't know if they knocked, but I'm assuming they knocked. You know, polite, "Hey, how you doing?" But pulled it, and he was like, "Yeah, I've been waiting for you." You see how language, like how optics and language work, like how we move within this country is very, very, very telling of the ills of this nation itself, like just America, in regards to how we can flip things and make things look a certain way on how we talk about these things. Like, I remember when I initially watched those school presidents sit down and talk to this lady, and she was asking that question, like, so calling for the genocide of Jews is not, you know, something that's punishable in your school, and yada yada yada. And they were talking about context, and all of the women kept saying context. If you watch her just say that and them say context, you're like, what the? This is a slam dunk, fam. Like, just say, yeah, no, that's wrong. But no, they all kept saying context because they weren't playing the clip of her saying that phrase, infantada, and then the phrase "from the river to the sea," which is another phrase that.
Yeah, sorry. The term "from the river to the sea" or Greater Israel, which means Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. That land stretches between the Jordan.
We're hearing you fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting an interruption here. Means the land between the Jordan and the sea. And in fact, for some of the traditional revisionist movement, the right wing of the Zionist party meant also across the river, even east of the river, into what is now known as Jordan, Transjordan at the time. So to say that that is an anti-Semitic term, or that it calls for the genocide of the Jews, is nonsense. It can mean, if you look at it from the point of view of the Israeli right, that Jews have the right to rule over all the land of Israel.
Even Israeli people use in Israel, but it's a phrase that is highly contested because there is what's his name? Hezbollah uses it to mean like getting rid of Israel and Israeli people as a whole, and like Palestinians and peaceful protesters and everybody else who who's looking for like a two-state or one-state solution where we all just come together in peace. They're talking about from the river to the sea, like we'll rise, like we'll be peacefully together. So again, it's a language thing. You have to hear the language and how they use it, and how it's just like, it's no different than me being a black man and me being an African in America. I don't know where I'm from, so I say black because I ain't do a 23andMe yet, but me being who I am and hearing like urban is a dog whistle for black, or hearing like streetwear. Like I don't like the term streetwear because you're talking it's just like it's a dog whistle. Fashion is fashion is fashion. You can say where it originated from, like, oh, this originated from like young kids who lived in these impoverished neighborhoods who were able to make a way for themselves to either procure the clothes through legal means or illegal means, but they took it and they flipped it and made it look cooler. I don't think that's, I just think that's fashion. Or when you say urban, like urban, which is like, you could just say, oh, this is a neighborhood. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like you can better word these things, but people rather use dog whistles or ghetto. And what's funny is ghetto's a dog whistle for black, but ghetto was the first ghettos that we know of were used by the Nazi Germany, placing Jews in these horrible living conditions, and they called them ghettos. And then as time went on, the ghetto stayed the thing, and then they just put black folk there. Nevertheless, you just got to be real mindful of how they talk, like how people are chatting about things is can put you in a place where you think that you're on the right side of history or whatever have you, and you really just looking at things real weird, and you have to objectively look at things. Because like I said, initially when I looked at that Congress here, and I was like, yo, what is wrong with these presidents? Like, what are they talking about? Like, what are you talking about context? She's asking you like, yo, the eradication of a people. It's like, it is context, because you know what infanticide means if you look up the term. You know what from the river to the sea means if you look up the term. If you look up the term and you look up who's using it, you know what those terms are, but then see who is using those things. Can you use that same logic for everything? No, but that's just how life works, right? Like me as a dude from America, like I use the word nigga. I don't use it all the time, but I'm not a huge fan of other people who are outside of the culture using it, right? But I'm not gonna say that those people using it. I mean, I use it, and I'm gonna say that those people using it are necessarily wrong for using it, depending on where they grew up and how their culture works. But what I will say though is just step back from yourself and look at the optics of things. So, like for instance, me as a black man, half Caribbean, using that term amongst my black friends or whatever, I'm cool with it. Coming from New York City, I grew up around a lot of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. The Puerto Rican friends I've had who who knew they were like Afro-Puerto Rican or like understood like how the island was created, like how the Puerto Rican people came to be, they knew they had African in them, and they grew up in predominantly black and Hispanic neighborhoods, so they said it. But like in some places, Puerto Rican people, black folk will look at a Puerto Rican person and not say it. Dominican people, same thing. Dominican people who are in tune with their blackness as far as like understanding like how that island went through what it went through, what the Haitians went through, and all of those things. They in tune with their blackness, and then they use the term. But then again, in different neighborhoods, they can't say it. Or the ones that don't use the term as a term of endearment or a friendly side, they'll use it as like from a colonizer kind of position, like with the ER and all that and all what have you. But again, it's language. You gotta peep the language. But I say that I look at it objectively. Like if you have to think about a word that you're using, so to speak, is this the right thing? Like, can I say this? Can I say that? Really think about that. Like if you gotta think about, can I say the N-word? You probably shouldn't be saying it. But if you have to think about, can I say infertility? Like look up Intifada. What that term means. Figure out like where do you stand in this situation? Because as far as me and all the people I know, everybody's just looking for a peace all around the world, whether it be Israel, Palestine, the Congo, Sudan, where else? Just Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, because Pakistan and Afghanistan feuding right now. Just all of America. It's all over the world. Like, pick up the language, right? And see where you at with it. Like, understand that, like, the thing I learned is trying to pick up learning these other languages across the world is that English is the language of deception. So it's real easy to like get yourself caught up saying the wrong things, or saying the right things, but with a smile on your face and meaning something totally different. So you got to really see and look for the intentions in a person, and make sure that you do got the cape, bro. All right, peace.